Welcome to today's Manufacturing Engineering Media webinar. Our topic is Benefits of an Integrated Quality Solution, sponsored by Plex Systems. Hello, I'm Jim Sawyer, Senior Editor at Manufacturing Engineering Media. Before the presentation begins, I'd like to provide some background on what we will be doing today. Our sponsor, Plex Systems, a cloud ERP technology company, offers the only manufacturing cloud that delivers plant floor-focused ERP to manufacturers. The Plex ERP cloud is available no matter what device you're using, and it's also available when and where you like. Our presenter, Matthew Littlefield, is President and Principal Analyst at LNS Research. He will share an industry-leading approach for integrating quality management in the context of aerospace and defense manufacturing environments. That approach, enterprise quality management software, can help identify and solve real-time issues throughout the supply chain. You will be able to ask questions during the presentation using the Q&A box that appears on the right of the screen. Following the presentation, Matt will answer those questions. If time runs out before we get to all the questions for Matt, we will make sure the answers are emailed to you. And if you have questions about any other aspects of ME Media's webinars, please email me at jsawyer@sme.org. Now, here is Matt Littlefield.
Well, thanks for that great introduction, Jim. I'm really excited to be here. This has been over a year-long research project for us at LNS, and we're really excited for being hosted by Manufacturing Engineering and being sponsored by Plex today to share some of this research. It's been a comprehensive research program focused on the role of quality systems, processes, and technology in a number of different industries, and in particular the discrete manufacturing industries in aerospace and defense. I wanted to start with one of the key findings from the research, and I think as we go through we may validate why this is happening and what value it's delivering, but our research shows a major planned adoption in the quality management systems space at the enterprise level over the next year. We surveyed over 500 companies, and we saw over 30% of companies saying, hey, we're adopting over the next year an enterprise quality management software system. So there's a number of reasons for that, and it's important as companies go down that journey that they do it in the right way, what we believe is an integrated way for the keys to capturing that value. So in today's presentation, we're going to share a little bit about LNS because I think it's important to understand how this research was collected and what it represents to apply it best to your own business. Talk why quality matters in the aerospace and defense industry, and then share some of our benchmark data around trends in the industry as well as performance benefits by using certain technologies and business process approaches. And then we'll end with some specific best practices for quality systems and some actionable recommendations that all of the listeners can take home to their businesses to start improving. So for those on the line who haven't been introduced to LNS Research before, this is our third year, and we're very focused on what we term operational excellence. So these are areas of a company that are critical to the manufacturing process, to the plant floor, and then how that connects to the rest of the business. So we look at topics like quality management, like manufacturing efficiency, like maintenance and asset management, like sustainability, energy management, and help companies understand how that should be infused throughout their business and how that can drive performance benefits. And we do that through an experienced analyst team, through our deep primary research, both on quantitative surveys and qualitative case studies, and then through interactive data visualizations, many of which we'll share today. So just to give a sense of who's in this research sample, this was launched back in the summer of 2012, so it's been an ongoing research project for over a year now. and it's based on over 500 responses from a number of different industries and company sizes, spread pretty evenly. So we have a good mix of large, medium, and small companies. When we look at headquarters of the companies, it's mainly North American and European, with some Asian. This was a online English-based survey. And then we look at the industries. We see the discrete manufacturing industry is leading there, just over 50%, and then a good split between batch and process. So batch being food and beverage, CPG type companies, and process being oil and gas, chemicals type company, and then pharma being those med device pharma type companies. So we're going to share a lot of quantitative research today, but a lot of the stories and discussions that we share will also be informed by our qualitative discussions. So we host a executive council focused on the quality space. So these are all director level and VP level quality leaders, so responsible for managing quality within the organization. We have a number of different types of companies, from discrete manufacturing right through to the process industries and even retail. So a broad understanding of what drives a quality executive's decision-making, how they interact with operations and manufacturing leaders, how they interact with IT leaders, and what those joint strategies are to improve quality and improve productivity throughout the organization. And I think it's important to put your research and data within the context of a improvement model. So how do you use this research, and how does it apply to a company? And you'll see a lot of the questions that we ask and the way that we present this information falls within this research model. So we very much start with strategic objectives. So what are companies today trying to accomplish within their particular spaces? And this could be different areas or levels in the business. So it could be financial objectives at the highest level, and then drill that down to operations and quality and IT and other areas. And hopefully we see some alignment there, but not always. Often there are gaps, which we'll discuss. And then you want to be able to evaluate your performance in achieving these objectives. So we look at the challenges that companies face, and we look at the metrics that they're using to gauge performance, to see whether or not they're improving the way they want to improve, and even whether or not they're becoming predictive in some of their metrics. And then, of course, as a research company focused on things like benchmarking and operational excellence, we believe that it's important to understand how your company compares to the peer group from your industry, and then what it's like to be a market-leading company. So what are those top-tier performers at in their metrics, and then what do you have to do to get there as a company? And hopefully build this in to some type of continuous improvement process, like measure, validate, and improve. And then the final piece on L&S is understand the value chain and how we think about operations. So when you look at an area like quality, quality impacts the entire value chain. So when we think about the value chain, this is both for new and existing products and how value is produced for those products. So you have the design of those products, you have the procurement of raw materials, and you have to manufacture those products, you have to maintain those manufacturing assets, and you have to deliver those products to the market and then service those products over time. And in each of these areas, a company has executive leaders responsible for these silos of excellence, but you don't want them to exist purely as silos. So you need to have excellence in sales and service and manufacturing, but you also have to build in business processes that connect these different areas of the business and help orchestrate enterprise-wide business process. And we think quality is a very important area of business process that goes across the value chain. And that's what we mean when we talk about integrated quality. So hopefully that sets up L&S research and where we're coming from. I want to dive now into some of these industry trends that we're seeing and how that should be shaping your strategy within your business. So when we look at the A&D market, there's certainly two major trends that we're seeing impacting performance today and decisions today. Obviously, the budget cuts are impacting the large companies as well as the smaller companies. And it's forcing companies to do more with less, be more agile and flexible, so being able to deliver within different time frames, being able to ramp up and ramp down production. So it's really forcing agility among companies in the industry. So being able to respond to these relatively abrupt changes is an important piece of success for any manufacturing company within the A&D space. The other major trend at the highest level that we're seeing is the challenges that many companies have had with delivering high-profile new products to the market. Obviously, we have the Dreamliner. We've had other issues. And quality has played a major role in these large, high-profile events. And it's been a coordination issue. It's been an integration issue, both across the supply chain and within specific components. So we see that the need for being agile, being responsive to the marketplace, but then also ensuring quality is being measured and managed across the supply chain as well as within particular companies. So given this backdrop that we've seen over the past year or two, here's some of the survey data that we're seeing, and it's not too surprising. The major driver for, I think, all companies, in particular the A&D industry, is growing revenue. So there's pressures now on budget cuts, and companies are really trying to figure out how to address these budgetary challenges and ensure that they're hitting their revenue goals, given the shortfalls in the industry. So most companies today are focused on revenue growth. But one area that we're not seeing that impacting is manufacturing operations or operational objectives. So even though at the highest level companies are trying to grow, within manufacturing they're still focusing on things like efficiency as the top objective. Now, efficiency is not bad in manufacturing. Anybody who's been anywhere from a supervisor to a plant manager to a VP of manufacturing knows each year you have new targets and new objectives, and continuously improving your scrap rates, your material variance rates, your downtime rates, all those things you have to improve year over year. But our thought is, given the context of the industry today, efficiency is good, but more companies need to think about how else manufacturing can help grow revenue and not just being a cost-cutting area of the business. So I think some of these other areas that didn't get as many respondents choosing are important areas to consider as possibly being a top objective, like improving the ability to deliver new products, like supply chain responsiveness, like compliance, which can be a major issue. If you're out of compliance, can hit revenue. And then the one that we thought was most interesting, and aerospace and defense is probably the only industry that had this result, was the major lack of focus on the customer. So I think very often A&D companies get very focused on their programs, their projects, what's happening internally, and they don't necessarily focus the way they should on the customer. So this is a major area we think A&D companies can improve on, is more attentiveness to the needs of the customer and being a better partner in the supply chain. And then finally, when we drill that down to quality management, again we see some issue. We see the focus on cost, so reducing the cost of quality, not necessarily enabling growth within the business. So things like compliance and risk are important. We'll touch on those, and they're certainly related to quality. And cost of quality, if you think of it the right way, can be a growth enabler. If you're thinking about it as an investment on the process in good quality side to reduce recalls, to reduce nonconformances, and to improve the customer experience, then yes, it can be a growth area of the business. But I think, again, we see this lack of customer experience or focusing on the customer experience as a role of quality, specifically with A&D. And again, that's an area I think A&D manufacturers just culturally can focus on to help improve the role of quality and customer satisfaction and growth within the business. And then along these same lines at the highest level, I think when we look at the challenges companies face in quality, no matter what your goal is, it could be trying to reduce the cost of quality, it could be trying to be more responsive or reduce nonconformances. There's a couple of specific challenges that we see across all industries, but specifically in A&D. One being around effectively measuring metrics, so understanding how those quality processes are performing and how they're benefiting operations. And then this idea of disparate quality systems. So it's a big challenge within A&D, and it's a big challenge for a lot of industries where you have homegrown access databases for testing or for supplier quality or for compliance or for other areas of the quality processes, and they're not connected. They're siloed and used at the plant level and not connected to the enterprise. They're not providing visibility or continuous improvement benefits. So we're seeing a lot of companies tying these together and trying to address them with technology, frankly, for harmonizing systems, harmonizing process, and driving better visibility into metrics. So let's dive into what we see leading companies doing and thinking about when we talk about integrated quality and what enterprise quality management software really looks like and what it accomplishes. First, it definitely helps eliminate disparate systems and harmonize business processes. It addresses a lack of visibility into performance and compliance and risk. So very often companies are flying by. It focuses on enabling collaboration both between internal departments, so think engineering, procurement, manufacturing, sales and service, connecting all those from a quality perspective, and then also connecting with trading partners, so helping share quality data across the supply chain. And then bringing in that risk and compliance piece, which is so important in the aerospace and defense industry. So how is that supported from a IT architecture perspective? For larger companies, generally there's an ERP backbone. Most smaller companies may have a legacy ERP system, or they may still be using some homegrown or legacy applications focused more on accounting and financial than operations. And then there's a whole host of other systems that companies may use to help augment their ERP systems to gain specific functionality in particular areas like manufacturing or the supply chain or the laboratory. So companies have pure play types of software for all these different areas, and companies, when it comes to quality, have a big challenge in bringing all these different pieces together. Your ERP may have a quality module, generally not very strong, although that's changing for a number of vendors. And then all these other areas do a little bit of quality, but they aren't necessarily connected very well. So we've spent a lot of time over the past several years developing a functional diagram for thinking about how these different areas of a business connect. So in the background, most companies have an ERP system to manage their financials, their product data, their supplier data, the key systems of record issues for the company. And then companies have had to make decisions of each of those areas of value chain that we talked about earlier. Do I try and develop that within ERP, or do I interoperate with another system? And then finally, companies now, as they're moving and thinking about quality as a competitive advantage, how do we connect these different areas of the business with a quality system? And there's certain areas of quality that should be managed at the enterprise level. So things like your nonconformances, your corrective and preventive actions, your document control, your audit management, training and certification and learning management, reporting on the performance of these different processes. All of that, you shouldn't have different systems at each plant or at each site. It's much more efficient to manage this at the corporate level. So companies have to make decisions around how expansive their ERP solution should be, where they invest in other systems, and how they interoperate. Especially among smaller and medium-sized companies, we're seeing a trend towards trying to do these on a single system, especially as more and more companies have, or more and more vendors, I should say, have developed ERP manufacturing and quality capabilities on the same platform. That's some of the trends that we're seeing in the industry, moving toward that manufacturing platform approach that can connect the shop floor and quality to the rest of the enterprise. So that's the decisions we're seeing companies trying to make when it comes to integrated quality. and hopefully this can be a good reference point for folks to think about how to connect these different areas of the business and these different types of software. On these next few slides, I really wanted to share some of the adoption rates that we're seeing around particular types of technology. I showed that earlier slide on quality, but obviously I want to look at ERP and some other areas. So ERP is a relatively mature software category, especially compared to enterprise quality management software, and we see much higher adoption rates. Although we are seeing companies, especially in A&D, about 16% of the market there, thinking about planning to adopt ERP software. We're nowhere near at the level that we're seeing quality software. Let's see here. And similar to ERP, BI, which addresses a lot of those reporting and metrics issues that we talked about earlier, not as mature as ERP, but we are starting to see companies thinking about and planning to adopt BI at a slightly faster rate than ERP, but not yet at that same level that we're seeing within the quality space, which is really at that about that 30% level. So we're seeing big interest within quality as a major driver for these different applications. And I think the more you can deliver these holistically, the stronger your case will be for delivering quick value as an integrated solution. And then I also thought it would be interesting to look at, among those companies that have adopted quality software already, what different parts have been adopted, and how does A&D compare in different areas of adoption. So again, we see, and this is pretty consistent across all industries, NC Kappa and document control leading the charge and then dropping off pretty quickly after that. It's interesting to see that customer service was not very high on the list of drivers earlier, and then when we see the complaint handling is pretty low here in adoption for A&D industry, so that one certainly stands out as what should be looked at and adopted more. But in general, A&D companies are doing a good job once they adopt EQMS of adopting a broad set of different business processes within quality. And I think that's an important piece. And a lot of companies don't necessarily think of how these different quality processes interconnect with each other. So most companies will have some type of Kappa process where they capture their nonconformances and then go through root cause analysis to understand how to correct it and prevent it from happening in the future. But if that's disconnected from your other processes, there's potential gaps there. So that Kappa process can trigger a change in risk, or it can trigger the need for an audit, or it can trigger a change in your manufacturing process and what is a GMP for your company. So connecting these processes can really drive efficiencies and what we call closed-loop quality or integrated quality. So it's important not only to connect quality with the different areas of the value chain, but also interconnect those different quality processes that very often companies treat as relatively separate. So hopefully that section, just to summarize it quickly, showed why quality is important and a model for thinking about how quality can fit within your business and how you should think about what integrated quality is. In this next section, we'll talk about some of those real performance benefits we're seeing companies gaining from taking this integrated quality approach. In a little bit of a stats lesson, 101 stats from everybody in the class in your descriptive statistics class, but I like to use the box plot because it shows a lot of data relatively simply. So the way to look at the box plot in terms of the distribution of a sample set, that top thin tail is the top 25% of performers in a particular metric. Those two thick inner tails are the middle 25% quartiles of performance, and then the bottom skinny tail is the bottom 25% of performers. And the top is obviously the maximum, and the bottom there is the minimum, and then you have dots as outliers. So the goal is for companies really to get into that top tail and towards the top of the top tail. That's when you realize you're really achieving best-in-class performance, becoming a market leader. So one metric I wanted to start with, because I know a lot of companies are thinking about this and working on it, is the cost of quality. We've worked on it with a number of companies to help them streamline the metric, better measure the metric in their business, and use it as a benchmarking tool. But it's important for companies to think of the cost of quality is more than just failure costs. It's an optimization problem. It really is kind of your investments on the cost of good quality should help drive reductions in the cost of poor quality. And if it's done right, it can improve customer experience, it can reduce non-compliance events, and generally improve the overall operations of the firm. And just to give a sense of what is good quality versus what is poor quality, the way that we think about poor qualities, and this is a relatively well understood term across the industry, is it's the combination of internal failure costs and external failure costs. When we work with companies, we really try to advise them to focus on only those costs that actually hit the balance sheet. That's what gets the most, the profit and loss sheet, that's what gets the most executive attention. It's really easy to expand the scope of the cost of quality when you start thinking about opportunity costs and what can be lost by poor quality, but it's important to say, okay, here's really what's hitting the balance sheet and the profit and loss. So these are generally labor costs, equipment costs, and product costs, and both internal failures and then external failures. And then we do the same thing with the cost of poor quality. We focus on appraisal costs and prevention costs. And basically appraisal costs are all the testing and inspections that we do to ensure quality. And then prevention costs are really those activities focused on the continuous improvement, root cause analysis, eliminating failures, risk management, all those things that are much more preventive than just understanding what we've done and quantifying what we've done. And both of these are what really drive those reductions in the cost of poor quality. So if we're doing this efficiently and accurately, it should drive overall benefits and the reduction of the overall total cost of quality. I see a lot of companies trying to balance and play with the ratio of appraisal costs versus prevention costs, and most companies that we've seen anyways probably have a little bit higher appraisal costs than they would like, and it's important to put in strategies that can help move you to a more preventive approach than just quantifying those things that have already gone wrong. So this is a curve I like to share with people. I think it helps them think about the cost of quality and how to use those prevention activities to change the curve, to change how costs in their system are created by quality. So generally, people think about internal, external failures, where internal failures are generally low-cost events, think scrap rate, where external failures are generally high-cost events, think product recall or grounding of a fleet. So the more that you can do as an organization to catch quickly issues while they're still internal, the more you'll do to reduce a particular cost. And there's really two ways to try and do this. There are corrective actions, and there are then preventive actions, where corrective actions help address the issue, and preventive issues help stop that issue from happening in the first place. And each have different effects on that cost of quality curve, where you can see a corrective action will shift the cost of a particular event downwards. So think about it as having put in place a customer complaint system that's more robust, so you can respond more quickly. So even though that external failure still gets to the marketplace, you can contain it quicker, address it quicker. It has a lower cost to the business. So that's a corrective action. Whereas a preventive action may be supplier quality management initiatives, so that supplier quality issue never gets into your product, never gets to the customer. So that really moves it from being an external failure cost to an internal failure cost. So the total improvement of cost is actually better with that preventive action. But it doesn't necessarily change the shape of that curve. So it's important really to do both, but it's just important to know the differences between the two and be cognizant of that. So that's kind of what the cost of quality is, how to benchmark it, and how to think about it within the context of your business. The next thing that companies are trying to do and think about is how to be more effective in your quality processes, how actually to start reducing the cost of quality, not just benchmark the cost of quality and think about it in new ways. And the way we think companies should start trying to reduce the cost of quality is becoming more predictive and having both kind of process results as well as process health. And that, I think, can help folks get predictive. And it involves looking at not just the performance of operations, but the performance of your quality system itself. So a great metric might be supplier defect rates is a good example. So it's a metric that lots of companies track in the A&D industry, understanding how well and how on spec our suppliers are delivering us our issues. But that's not predictive at all, and we don't necessarily know how to improve that or be predictive of when that might be going wrong. And a good way to understand how that might be going wrong is to look at supplier audits. So if we do the right analysis and have the right metrics, we can start to try and see are there correlations between our supplier audit program and how well our suppliers are performing. And then get to start seeing, hey, we're not doing our supplier audits on time, we're behind on our supplier audits or supplier collaboration activities. And we can expect to see, or we would think we would see, issues in supplier defects and get ahead of that, get ahead of the curve. So it's both looking at our process results within operations, but then also those quality system performance metrics to help trigger those. So there's a lot of work companies are doing there to get more predictive, to get analytics around their quality systems, but I think it's an important area that a lot of companies are working on. All right, so now let's drill down into some of those particular metrics that go across the value chain and see how this idea of integrated quality can start lowering some metrics there. So the first metric I want to look at is OEE. This is a composite metric that looks across a company's particular assets and looks at the availability of those assets, the efficiency of those assets, and then the quality of the product being produced by those assets. So it looks at a number of different areas of performance among particular assets that can be rolled up. And we see pretty big changes in the distribution, anywhere from about 95% at the very top to about 55% at the bottom. And if you're in that 90 to 95% range, you're really in that market leadership position. And we see aerospace and defense generally doing better than the market. You can see the overall range there is tighter. And top 25% and top 50% performers are well above the industry at large. So A&D in general is doing well on that broad manufacturing efficiency metric, OEE. But there are particular ways that we've seen companies improving OEE. One in particular that we see is focused on leadership and culture. So having quality being consistently called out as a top strategic objective by leaders in the company generally definitely drive up manufacturing performance, or OEE, and in a quite large way, so 9% performance benefit compared to those who don't call quality a priority or just starting to think about how quality can really be a major differentiator for a company. So quality at the executive level is driving performance benefit. Another area that we're seeing benefit in manufacturing performance is visibility into quality metrics. So if you have that real-time visibility of quality metrics, we're seeing, again, about a 7% increase in OEE performance. So again, this can be things like SBC, where you're tracking particular process parameters over time, making sure they're staying within upper and lower control limits and making the right adjustments when needed. That type of real-time quality visibility drives manufacturing benefits for sure. Another area we're seeing improving OEE is this idea of closed-loop quality. So if you have something like an enterprise quality management software solution in place that's connecting data from across the value chain, that's actually driving up performance in your manufacturing. Again, 9% performance benefits in OEE we're seeing. And then finally, just by implementing that software around quality and integrating that with the enterprise, again, we're seeing about a 7% bump in OEE among those folks who have done it, among those companies who have done that. So the software itself, the users of that software, we're seeing with a performance benefit in OEE. Another important metric to look at is on-time and complete shipments. This is a good measure of supply chain efficiency, and of course manufacturing and quality play a role in how well you're able to deliver those products to market. Overall, we're seeing aerospace and defense within supply chain being more on par with the broader market. Very similar mean, very similar range of distribution. So A&D very much matches kind of the broader market when it comes to supply chain efficiency. In general, you can see a tighter distribution here than in OEE. It's from about 99% to 85%, where the OEE was from about 95 to 55. It's a more mature metric. It's been measured longer. More companies measure it. More companies have spent time trying to improve their supply chain efficiency versus OEE. So generally, we don't see as many improvement opportunities here as we do in manufacturing. So, whereas we were seeing 9, 8, 7% performance benefits in OEE, a good bump in supply chain on-time deliveries would be 2 or 3%. And because there's been more, I'd say, focus on supply chain efficiency over time, there's some of these kind of more mature areas are the ones really, or the areas that are only being adopted by the more mature companies. Kind of the stretch goals are the ones that are driving the most value today and benefits. So things like risk and putting in place risk management capabilities in your supply chain and impact quality, but also compliance. We're seeing driving performance benefits about 3% for risk factors. Closed loop quality is also helping in the supply chain, although not as much as it was in OEE, but it's certainly driving benefits. We're seeing about a 3% bump in on-time and complete shipments for building processes that are closed loop around quality. And then being able to share data through a web-based portal of some type. It could be a cloud-based EQMS system. It could be a more purpose-built data portal. But again, that's showing good benefits and a much, much tighter distribution for those companies in on-time and complete shipments. The next metric I wanted to look at was new product introductions. This is a very important metric for the aerospace and defense industry because so much of it is program-based and then changing to new programs and supporting the program development. And not surprisingly, we see the aerospace and defense industry really outperforming other industries when it comes to new product introduction. The industry is definitely a leader in this space. The mean is higher, the distribution is much tighter, so companies are doing a nice job. Some industries really struggle with successful new product introductions. Less than a quarter of their new products actually hit their budget for time, volume, and quality targets. But even though it's one of the strengths of the industry, we're still seeing ways that it can be improved and be improved pretty dramatically. And a lot of those have to do around risk and quality. So having a formal risk management framework and using that within your product development project and thinking about issues like quality, we're seeing a major improvement, about 32% improvement in successful new product introductions. The ability to identify those risk factors, again, is driving that big improvement of benefit, about 24%. And then this is a process that's really been led by a number of leading aerospace and defense companies, but building suppliers into that design for quality initiatives, so being more collaborative with your suppliers in your design process and including quality within that, again, gives you that nice tight distribution and improvement in the mean by about 9%. And then the final benefit here, as the slide comes up, is again around real-time visibility within metrics, and then being able to provide those metrics back to engineering. So the more visibility you have in metrics, and the more folks who are able to use that across the business, can help drive initiatives like design for manufacturability, design for quality. So companies who have that visibility improve not just their OEE but and manufacturing metrics, but also improve their ability to deliver new products to market. And then the final metric I wanted to look at was around products and compliance. So the way this metric is measured, it's the percentage of products produced while the company is in compliance with government regulations, customer mandates, and internal SOPs. And the goal for all companies is to have all three of those in alignment, so that as long as you're following your SOPs, you're in compliance with your customer mandates and regulations. And this really does measure the effectiveness of your quality management system, learning management system, and a number of other systems, your manufacturing systems in general. You see we have a very tight distribution here, and the A&D industry does very well, so the top 50% of performers are between 99 and 100% compliant. But then you do have those companies that are go down to 90% even at the lowest end of the metric. So again, A&D is doing better than other industries in terms of compliance. About 50% of the market is at 99% or higher in compliance, but there's still a number of companies struggling with compliance issues in the A&D industry. So for those companies, it's important to focus on those standard operating procedures, make sure they're easy to communicate, and understand the role of compliance within those SOPs. The more that's done, the stronger compliance we're seeing. So big improvement in compliance there. Again, this idea of closed-loop quality has major improvements in compliance. So there's a tight connection we're seeing between quality and compliance performance benefits. This idea of a formal NC-CAPA program and harmonizing this process across the enterprise, so every site uses the same type of CAPA process, we're seeing drive another about 3% benefit in compliance. And then the final one I want to talk about is audit management and harmonizing the audit management process. A lot of companies will have many disparate audit management processes. So internal audits will be different than external audits. Will be different than quality audit. Will be different than an EHS audit, for example. We're seeing companies trying to harmonize this, have a single version of the truth when it comes to their audit management program. And again, we see that approach improving compliance among companies. So I hope those four metrics that went across the value chain there, compliance, as well as your engineering, your manufacturing, supply chain metrics, gives a good view of those different ranges that companies are performing in, what it means to be best in class in each of those metrics for your industry, the A&D industry, and then some approaches that we're seeing drive performance benefits for companies in each of those areas. Before going to questions, I just wanted to wrap up with a few recommendations for success that you can take back to your business. I think it's really important to define the role of quality in terms of your company's strategic objectives. I think a lot of companies are thinking about growing revenue. I think more A&D companies need to think about how the customer plays into the overall process and how they can be more customer responsive and how they can help them grow revenue. And I think quality plays a big role in that. I think it's more A&D companies need to have a robust metrics program that looks at the different stages of the value chain, but then also becomes predictive of how we can improve the different stages of the value chain. Hopefully this gave you a sense of how you can do some benchmarking and how your company compares and how you can continue to improve over time. And then I think the most important piece is moving towards this idea of integrated quality, both integrating your quality processes like NC-CAPA, audit management, document management, but then ensuring that your quality system is very tightly coupled with your enterprise systems. So really having a single platform for your manufacturing, your quality, and your enterprise system is especially a strong option for companies in the small and medium-sized space. We're supplying to those large OEMs who don't have the large IT budgets for multiple systems and all of the integration and upkeep work that it takes to integrate multiple software packages over time. So I hope that gives everyone on the line a good sense of where the market's moving around quality, how you should be thinking about what integrated quality is, and what type of performance benefits moving that direction might drive for your firm. So with that, I'll be very interested and excited to see what questions you may have.
Matt, thank you very much. You sure packed a lot into the time we have here today. And this is Jim Sawyer again. I will be presenting you with the questions. First one is, how do you define risk management, and how is risk management related to quality management?
That's a really good question, Jim. You know, I think there's a lot of different definitions for risk management out in the marketplace today. The simplest definition is the identification of hazards, and then the both likelihood those hazards will happen and the impact that those hazards will have if they do occur. So companies want to develop a framework to identify those hazards, quantify the hazards, and then prioritize and mitigate against those hazards.
So you
those hazards, yeah?
I'm sorry, you would look at the potential for that risk to occur as maybe not an equal part of the rest of the analysis, but certainly an important part.
It sure is. You need to understand the probability as well as the impact. The challenge a lot of companies have is using a common ruler to quantify those risks across the business. So you can have, health and safety risks. You could have product safety risks. You could have operational risks. So building a common framework to measure those risks is a challenge for sure.
And another question, you mentioned the cost of quality. How are you seeing companies best measure the cost of quality in a sustainable way?
I think that's another good question, and one that we've seen companies struggle with, and that is over time measuring the cost of quality consistently. We've seen some companies try and do it with kind of surveying the different stakeholders in the organization, saying, okay, what of your headcount, how many are doing this type of quality, how many are doing this type of work. I think it's really important to use software to make this sustainable. I think it really has to come from that system of record. I think using your ERP system with analytics can really streamline that process of measuring the cost of quality and then not just doing it once, but being able to do it consistently over time. So it's really important, as I mentioned, to connect to that real financial data.
Mm-hmm. And finally, is it difficult to integrate all of these different manufacturing, quality, and business processes from a technology perspective?
Difficult, I would say, is certainly a relative term, and it depends on what your existing landscape looks like and what different software vendors you're going with. I would say, especially for smaller, mid-sized companies, the fewer different vendors you have, the better. So if these processes are managed in a common platform, I think that will greatly improve your ability to sustain the system over time and make sure that these business processes are interoperable.
So you would recommend eliminating complexity as much as possible in doing that?
Yeah. I definitely would avoid complexity as much as possible.
Okay, we're getting some late blooming questions here. Conflicts will occur between the local parts of any manufacturing system. How can this system manage and resolve conflicts?
It's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of change management that has to occur with the implementation of any new system. We were just talking with a company yesterday that had harmonized across a number of different sites. They've grown quickly, and they're now a global company. They were a U.S.-centric company. And nobody's really wrong. It's just everybody's doing things different across these different regions. So it's a cultural and change management issue to get buy-in, and it really has to come from the executives from the top to say, hey, nobody's wrong here, but each of the different sites or business units may have to sacrifice their number one choice for maybe their number two or number three choice because of the overall company benefits. It takes listening, it takes leadership. It can be a slow process for some companies, but I think if you can show them the benefits of the visibility and how they can do their job better, the more successful you'll be.
And we have one last question, which is good because our time is running short. What efficiency mistakes do you see being made most often, and what do you advise manufacturers to do to improve?
It's a very interesting question for sure. What are the top efficiency mistakes that we're seeing? It's hard to say what the top efficiency mistakes are out there. When it comes to quality, I think one gap that we're seeing a lot of companies not focusing on enough is the supplier quality area. Some companies are focusing on it, but a lot of companies still struggle with it. So not fully accounting for the impact your suppliers' quality issues can have on your own operations. And it can really wreak havoc on your own efficiency. So for companies not focusing on that, I see that as a big source of opportunity for companies to improve their own efficiency by better collaborating with their suppliers.
So poor quality from a vendor would be a drag on your efficiency once that product gets into your system.
Exactly.
Okay. Matt, thank you very much. As you proved with your presentation, it is imperative to keep abreast of technology and innovation in these highly competitive times. SME and manufacturing engineering media have a host of ways to help you stay abreast of ERP, manufacturing software, and quality initiatives. For example, the September issue of Manufacturing Engineering has a feature article on ERP software. The August issue included a special software supplement, which is also available for download at the tiny URL you see there on your screen, tinyurl.com/ME software supplement. And every issue of Manufacturing Engineering includes a software update section to keep you abreast of events. And speaking of events, SME itself has a number of events coming up where the software vendors will be present to answer your question and show you what they have. These are CMTS in Toronto at the end of this month, West Tech in Los Angeles, the middle of October, South Tech in Greenville, South Carolina, towards the end of October, and then Fab Tech in Chicago, the 18th through the 21st of November. Thanks for joining us for this Manufacturing Engineering Media webinar. We hope you found it